The varnish of certainty that covered the face of your opponents has just cracked, revealing a panic that they can no longer hide behind their facade smiles. What those who sought to lower you observe with dull terror is the moment when you stopped bearing the weight of their judgments to wear only the armor of your own truth. You understood that their superiority was only a theatrical setting, a fragile construction intended to intimidate those who still ignore their own strength. By standing up straight, with your eyes fixed on a horizon that they cannot even conceive, you have caused their staging to collapse. Their laughter choked in their throats because they no longer recognize in you the malleable victim they thought they could break at will. This metamorphosis of your attitude, this categorical refusal to look down, acts as a merciless mirror that returns to them the reality of their own smallness. Nothing is more destabilizing for a predator than to see his prey turn into a monument of majestic indifference. They watch you with that anxiety that we reserve for the forces of nature that we can no longer control or predict. Your presence has become a frequency that they no longer know how to pick up, a natural authority that needs no external validation to impose itself. The cracking of their masks means that the power game they were waging against you is definitely over. They feel that the rules have changed and that it is now you who hold the cards of reality. Every destabilization attempt they launch bounces off your surface like a straw arrow on a granite wall. You have acquired a density of existence that makes their plots paltry, almost pathetic, forcing them to contemplate the emptiness of their own existence in front of the fullness of yours. The invisible world that surrounds these power relations vibrates with a new tension, that of the imminent surrender of those who believe themselves invincible. You are now moving forward with the certainty of one who has already won the internal war, letting the corridor noises and betrayals die down in your wake. This fall of their artifices is your first trophy of sovereignty. They realize, with a bitterness that gnaws at them, that you never needed their approval to exist, while they desperately need your attention to feel alive. By taking this fuel away from them, you have condemned them to darkness. Let them pick up the debris of their fallen arrogance. Your path is now clear of their shadows, and your radiance has become the sole judge of their total defeat. The frenzied agitation of those who are conspiring against you has just come up against a wall of serenity, the breach of which they are unable to find. What your detractors observe with increasing anxiety is this complete lack of nervous reaction to their vilest provocations. You have understood that silence is the sharpest weapon in the spiritual arsenal, a force of inertia that absorbs their attacks without offering them any echo on which to rely. By refusing to descend into the arena of their low emotions, you have created a power vacuum that sucks their own energy, leaving them exhausted by their own gesticulations. This calm is not an absence of life. It is a fullness so dense that it acts as a paralyzing force field for anyone who approaches it with impure intentions. They see you standing still, looking towards the heights they fear, and this granite stability makes them dizzy, because it suggests a self-control that they have long lost. Nothing is more terrifying for the shadow than to meet a light that does not blink its eyelids. Your enemies, accustomed to dramas and verbal jousting, find themselves helpless in front of this royal silence, which does not even grant them the benefit of an anger. Your peace has become their torment. It acts as a revelation of their own instability, forcing each of their plots to collapse due to lack of resistance. They are waiting for a flaw, a tremor, a justification, but you only offer them the immensity of a lake whose surface remains imperturbable despite the stones they throw there. This paralysis that they feel is the mark of your natural authority. You have ceased to be a reactor to become the center of gravity of your universe. By remaining in control of your breath and your expression, you have reversed the psychological pressure, forcing them to justify themselves in front of the distorting mirror of their impotent hatred. The radiation that emanates from your posture is a frequency that saturates the air and makes any betrayal unbreathable for those who wear it. You move forward with a calculated slowness, a precision of movement that testifies to a consciousness totally aligned with its purpose. This economy of words and gestures is the external sign of an internal victory that has already been consummated. The sentinels of malice see in this calmness the proof that you possess resources that they can neither steal nor corrupt. Let them fidget in the emptiness of their own torments. Your tranquility is the final verdict of their defeat. You now live in a space where the noise of the world no longer penetrates, aware that it is in this sacred immobility that the reality of your empire is forged far, far away from the foam of their vain aggressions. The methodical relentlessness of those who hope to see you flex under the weight of the trials has just broken against the steel of your endurance. What your opponents contemplate with disbelief mixed with dread is the moment when all their strategies of harassment, slowing down and sabotage have finally blunted on the smooth surface of your determination. They had bet on time, on the fatigue of your nerves, and on the exhaustion of your resources, but they discover with horror that each assault has only strengthened the atomic structure of your will. You have transformed their war of attrition into a forging process. What was supposed to break you has only served to eliminate your last slag, revealing a being of unalterable density. Seeing that their traps no longer provoke in you but a smile of indifference, they realize that time is no longer their ally, but the witness of their own disintegration in the face of your rise in power. Nothing is more demoralizing for an opposition force than to find that its efforts produce the opposite effect of the one sought. They threw you into the fire to consume you, but they offered you the ideal temperature for your own transmutation. Your ability to absorb shocks without losing your initial trajectory has caused their combat logic to sink. They no longer know how to reach you, because you no longer react according to the laws of classical human vulnerability. You have acquired a form of metaphysical resilience that renders their attempts to destabilize as futile as waves crashing on a basalt cliff. This sinking of their tactics means that you have reached a level of consciousness where the external conflict no longer feeds your stress, but your discipline. They exhaust themselves rowing against the current of your success, while you glide on the water with the quiet strength of a deep-sea ship that ignores surface storms. The source has sealed this solidity in you as a reward for your unfailing perseverance in the dark. You are now moving forward with the lightness of one who has survived the worst, and who knows that nothing more that they will invent will be able to hinder his walk. Their whispers, their administrative obstacles, or their friendly betrayals are no more than background noises, insignificant details in the great work of your life. The sentinels of malice, petrified by your lack of fatigue, are beginning to understand that attacking you is like attacking a law of nature. Let them sink into the quicksand of their own wickedness. Your victory lies in this ability to remain intact in the midst of chaos, proving every second that your inner empire is built on foundations that time can neither erode nor corrupt. The stalking atmosphere that once weighed on your shoulders has just dissipated, giving way to an electrical voltage of which you are now the emitter pole. What your opponents perceive with a cold sweat is the precise moment when the gaze of the one who was fleeing turned into the one who observes with surgical precision. You have stopped hiding, justifying yourself, or anticipating the blows to adopt a posture of quiet vigilance which places them, under the beam of your lucidity. This reversal of roles is not the result of a noisy revenge, but of a change in vibrational frequency. By fully inhabiting your space, you have made their presence cumbersome and their malevolence visible to everyone. They feel hunted down by your simple silence, stripped bare by your calmness, and terrified by the idea that you can now decide on the time and form of the confrontation. The shadow hunter has become the target of his own fear, because he no longer knows how to act in the face of a being who no longer plays the role of the victim. Nothing is more destabilizing for a group of plotters than realizing that the object of their obsession has taken control of the narrative. They observe you with that sickly hesitation that one has in front of a fawn whose intentions we do not understand, but whose contained power we feel. Your presence now saturates every room, every conversation, every thought they try to formulate against you, to the point that their own venom begins to suffocate them. You don't need to run anymore. You are waiting for them at the turn of their own decay, aware that their mental structure collapses as soon as they lose the psychological ascendancy. This end of the hunt marks your advent as master of the game. You have transformed the labyrinth that they had built to lock you up into a training ground for your own sovereignty. They believe themselves to be the predators of a fragile soul. They discover themselves the prisoners of a will that surpasses them by several heads. The source validated this change by removing the protective veil that covered their secret actions. You are now moving forward with the authority of one who no longer has anything to fear, because you have understood that their strength lies only in your consent to be afraid. By taking back this consent, you have reduced them to the state of wandering shadows, desperately seeking a way out in a world that they no longer recognize. The sentinels of malice, petrified by this new assurance, see in you the judge of their past failures. Let them feel this vertigo of being seen, judged and condemned by the brilliance of your simple existence. Your position is now impregnable, and your calm is the net in which their own arrogance has just become entangled definitively. The instrument of torture that they had forged for your spirit has just changed hands, now distilling its poison in the very heart of their own ranks. What your detractors experience with a dull terror is the moment when the uncertainty that they sought to sow in you ended up taking root in their own soil. You have understood that malice is an energetic boomerang that always ends up coming back to hit the one who launched it, with a force multiplied tenfold by the emptiness of its target. By remaining impervious to their criticism and their attempts to destabilize, you force these shadows to turn their weapons on themselves. They are now asking themselves why you are not falling, why you are not weakening, and this unanswered question becomes the cancer of their own confidence. This venom of doubt paralyzes them. They begin to suspect each other, to question the effectiveness of their hatred, and to fear that your success will be proof of their own insignificance. Nothing is more devastating for a shadow coalition than to see its venom become inoperative. They observe you with this sick suspicion that we have in front of a mystery that we cannot solve, and this misunderstanding turns into a paranoia that eats away at their alliances. Every success you achieve, every step you take with confidence, is an extra drop of gall in their own cup. You didn't have to attack them. All you had to do was shine with unbearable constancy, so that the darkness they carry becomes their own prison. This reversal of doubt means that you have reached a state of internal coherence so high that it disintegrates any attempt at external manipulation. They now feel fragile, exposed, and vulnerable before the solidity of your personal empire, because they realize that their power was only due to the illusion of your weakness. The source allowed this flashback to purify your environment from those who only know how to destroy. You are now moving forward with the lightness of one who knows that time is working for him, while your enemies are exhausting themselves in healing the wounds that they themselves have opened. This venom of doubt is their natural punishment. It condemns them to mental wandering and bitterness, depriving them of the peace they wanted to steal from you. The sentinels of malice, petrified by their own decay, see in you the ardent mirror of what they could have been if they had not chosen the path of betrayal. Let them get lost in the twists and turns of their own worries. Your certainty has become their poison, and your silent triumph is proof that nothing can shake a will that has made doubt its stepping stone to greatness. The scaffolding of rumors and distortions that your detractors have taken months to build has just collapsed under the simple weight of your lived reality. What the artisans of slander observe with impotent rage is the moment when their invented narratives have ceased to bite on opinion to turn into proofs of their own dishonesty. You have understood that lies are a volatile substance that requires a constant supply of fear and reaction. By opposing to them the solidity of a life lived in the transparency of your intentions, you deprive their venom of its oxygen. Their attempts to smear your name have only succeeded in highlighting the cleanliness of your hands and the nobility of your background. This bankruptcy of defamation is a strategic disaster for them. They hope to see you justify yourself, apologize, or collapse, but your sovereign contempt for their fables has made their attacks ridiculous in the eyes of those who still have a heart to discern the true from the false. Nothing is more humiliating for a liar than to find that his audience begins to laugh at his relentlessness. They are watching you with this sick frustration that we have in front of a target that we cannot stain, because your vibration frequency has become too high for the mud to adhere to it. Every word they utter against you now seems to backfire on their own credibility, eroding what little influence they had left. You have acquired a form of ethical shielding that renders any rumor inoperative. People no longer believe what they say about you. They believe what they see in you. This triumph of authenticity over sham has transformed your name into a symbol of resilience. while theirs sinks into the quicksand of mediocre manipulation. They find themselves trapped in their own net, forced to deny the evidence of your righteousness in order not to admit their own moral defeat. The source sealed this failure by making your life an open book that no one can censor anymore. You are now advancing with the authority of one who does not need to plead his case, because the very reality of your achievements speaks for you with an eloquence that no one can match. This end of false illusions is your patent of immunity. It means that you have passed the stage where you can still be reached by the verb. The sentinels of slander, petrified by the ineffectiveness of their campaigns, see in you the living proof that the truth has its own force of gravity. Let them choke on their own stories. Your integrity has become a sun that dispels the fog of their inventions, letting your empire shine with a light that no shadow can ever tarnish again. The architecture of your mind has just completed its final mutation, transforming your former vulnerabilities into granite bastions that no intrusion can shake anymore. What the manipulation engineers observe with chilling despair is the moment when the psychological levers that they once used to make you doubt, feel guilty, or react have been purely and simply disintegrated. You have understood that the enemy only possesses the power that you leave to him by keeping open doors in your unconscious. By identifying and closing every breach of your past, you have made their access to your intimacy impossible. This closure of your inner space is a catastrophe for those who live from your reactions. They are now knocking against a wall of certainty that returns no sound, no echo, no catch. Their expertise in mind sabotage has shattered against the smooth surface of your new consciousness, because you no longer offer any rough edges to their hooks of hatred. Nothing is more frustrating for a parasite than to see its host become an inviolable sanctuary. They observe you with that sick obsession of the thief in front of a safe whose combination has been changed without his consent, realizing that words, threats, or flattery slip over you without leaving a trace. Your emotional stability has become a fortress of which you are the only guardian and the only architect. By healing your own wounds, you have removed the anchors of their malice. They are desperately looking for the crack through which they could still distill their venom, but they only encounter the fullness of a being who has reconciled with himself. This disappearance of the flaws means that you have reached a state of active invulnerability where your peace no longer depends on external circumstances, but on the solidity of your internal foundations. The source sealed this seal by making your silence an electrified barrier for everything that is not aligned with your frequency. You are now moving forward with the authority of the one who has regained full control of his vibratory territory, leaving the manipulators at the door of your existence. This sealing of your soul is your ultimate act of defense. It proves that you have passed the stage of struggle to enter that of absolute mastery. The sentinels of interference, petrified by your inscrutability, see in you the end of their influence and the beginning of your total independence. Let them exhaust themselves searching for a flaw in your armor. Your consistency has become your surest bulwark, and your lack of reaction is the final verdict of their definitive exclusion from your universe. The miscalculation that your opponents made about the nature of your silence has just turned into an abyss under their own feet. What the architects of your fall observe with a knotted throat is the moment when the small flame that they thought they could blow out with a single breath turned out to be the heart of a solar brazier. They had classified you as harmless beings, passive souls that can be trampled on without fear of backfire. But today they discover that your calm was only the restraint of a giant in full gestation. This vertigo grips them because they no longer have the tools to measure the extent of what you have become. Their old patterns of domination have become paltry in the face of the mass of your presence. Seeing you perform feats that they considered impossible for someone of your condition, they realize with horror that their contempt was only a veil over their own blindness. Nothing is more devastating for a tyrant's ego than to find that he himself has nurtured the force that will oust him. They observe you with that sickly amazement that one has in front of a mountain that suddenly emerges from a landscape that we thought was flat, realizing too late that each test they imposed on you has only hardened your fiber and sharpened your intelligence. Your current success is a metaphysical slap in the face that resonates in their sleepless nights, because it proves that their judgment was worthless. You have acquired a stature that forces them to raise their heads to meet your gaze, a position that places them physically and spiritually in a posture of inferiority that they would never have imagined. This change is total. The contempt they displayed has turned into a horrified fascination, because they feel that you now have the power to erase them from your landscape by the simple force of your indifference. The source sealed this reversal by making your glory the mirror of their mediocrity. You are now advancing with the authority of one who no longer needs to prove his worth, because your results scream louder than all their past slanders. This vertigo of the vanquished is your patent of power. It means that you have exceeded the limits that they had set for you, rendering null and void any attempt to put you back in the cage. The sentinels of underestimation, petrified by your unlimited expansion, see in you the proof that the fire that smolders under the ashes is the most dangerous of all. Let them tremble before the majesty of your ascension. Your victory is all the more brilliant because it was built on the rubble of their false certainties, making you the one and only master of a destiny that they will never again be able to understand or hinder. The pack that had once united with the sole purpose of harming you has just broken up under the unbearable pressure of your lack of reaction. What the architects of these precarious coalitions observe with rampant paranoia is the moment when the cement of their common hatred has dried to turn into a dust of mutual accusations. You have understood that alliances built on the destruction of others have no real roots. By remaining a monolithic block of silence and success, you have forced these shadows to look at each other with the suspicion of plotters who feel the wind is turning. They begin to blame themselves for their crushing failure, to betray themselves to save what remains of their own skin, and to look for scapegoats within their own circle. This sinking of their fake solidarity is the direct consequence of your solidity. Faced with an opponent that we can neither corrupt nor shake, the natural cowardice of the mediocre pushes them to devour each other, so as not to be the last one standing on the sinking ship. Nothing is more revealing of the fragility of evil than to see its servants divide as soon as the wind of defeat rises. They are watching you with that helpless hatred that is now turning into a disgust for their own accomplices, realizing that no one is ready to sacrifice themselves for a cause as sterile as your fall. Your sovereign presence has acted as an acid on the bonds of their hypocritical loyalty. They are now discovering themselves alone, isolated in their own gall, while you continue to trace your furrow with a metronome regularity. Each step you take towards your goals weakens their secret agreements a little more, because they clearly see that their number does not match the quality of your being. This disintegration of their network means that you won the morale battle without even having to draw a single weapon. Their own envious nature ended up doing the cleaning work for you. The source has allowed this chaos among your enemies to show you the emptiness of those who unite against the light. You are now moving into a purified space, where the corridor whispers and the packs of the shadow no longer have any hold on the reality of your empire. This spectacle of their self-destruction is your patent of tranquility. It proves that the one who is at peace with himself always ends up seeing his opponents exhaust themselves in internecine struggles for a power that they have never really possessed. The sentinels of betrayal, petrified by their own isolation, see in you the proof that the only alliance that is worth is that which one contracts with one's own truth. Let them collapse in the rubble of their failed plots. Your path is now free of any organized interference, and your march to the peaks continues under the gaze of a sky that has finally swept away the clouds of their malice. The air seems to become denser and become charged with an electrical voltage as soon as your steps cross the threshold of a room, imposing a respect that no one dares to dispute anymore. What the spectators of your ascent observe with a knotted throat is the moment when your mere arrival is enough to modify the frequency of the environment, sweeping away the futile chatter and the corridor plots with a single aura flip. You have understood that the real power does not lie in the volume of the voice, but in the mass of the presence. By inhabiting every cell of your body with total consciousness, you have acquired a spiritual gravity that stabilizes everything around you. This saturation of space by your radiation acts as an anesthetic on malice. Your enemies lose their means, forget their prepared lines, and suddenly feel helpless before the evidence of your solidity. They see you exist with such intensity that their own reality seems to crumble, reducing them to the state of blurred silhouettes gravitating around your unshakable center of gravity. Nothing is more intimidating for those who live in appearance than to meet a being whose very being is a decree of sovereignty. They observe you with that fearful fascination that one has in front of an approaching thunderstorm, feeling that your silence carries within it a lightning capable of pulverizing their illusions in a thousandth of a second. Your presence no longer demands space, it creates it. It no longer requires attention, it captures it by the force of its internal coherence. By ceasing to try to please or convince, you have become a monolith of pure will that saturates the atmosphere with a natural authority of which no one has the key. This weight of your stature means that you have reached a level of mastery where your simple existence has become a law of social physics. People are moving away, obstacles are being cleared, and tongues are loosened to speak only the truth. They feel observed even in their darkest thoughts by the brilliance of your gaze, realizing that nothing that is false can survive long under the beam of your light. The Source has sealed this magnitude by making your body the receptacle of a power that no longer knows geographical limits. You are now moving forward in a world that seems to adjust to your frequency, where circumstances bend to your intention even before you have formulated a wish. This radiation that saturates the space is your ultimate shield. It creates a security perimeter where only excellence and integrity can breathe. The sentinels of mediocrity, petrified by the density of your energy field, see in you the end of their era of manipulation. Let your shadow spread over their doubts and your brilliance consume their fears. Your presence has become the new standard of greatness, a quiet force that redefines space-time with each of your breaths, proving to everyone that the Master does not need to speak for the entire universe to obey him. The illusion of protection that your enemies had built up behind their networks, their money, or their titles has just evaporated like a mist in contact with a steely sun. What the architects of their own comfort observe with visceral anguish is the moment when the walls that they thought impassable turned out to be nothing but papier-mâché in the face of the thrust of your authenticity. You have understood that external security is only a screen for trembling souls. By developing a force that does not depend on any material support, you have made their arsenal obsolete. Their lawyers, their connections, and their institutional lies no longer protect them from the atomic truth that you give off with every step. This fall of their ramparts is a spectacle of absolute destitution. They find themselves exposed, naked under the gaze of the world, realizing that nothing they possess can buy the respect that you naturally inspire. They had thought that their social position was a shield. They discover that it is only a target for the imminent justice that you now embody. Nothing is more terrifying for a coward than to lose the shelter of his own importance. They watch you with that mute panic of the castaway who sees his lifeline deflate, understanding that their influence only works on those who agree to crawl. By standing, you have broken the spell of their fake authority, forcing them to face their own inner emptiness without any artifice to support them. Your insolent success, built on the ruins of their sabotage attempts, acts like a battering ram that breaks down the doors of their supposed impunity. You have acquired a form of power that crosses the layers of bureaucracy and the veils of secrecy to reach them where they felt untouchable. This triumph of being over having transformed their fortress into a glass prison where their every movement is now scrutinized and judged by the clarity of your trajectory. The Source allowed this collapse to show that true security is a conquest of the mind, not an accumulation of privileges. You are now advancing into a field of ruins where the symbols of their power are nothing more than paltry debris under your soles. This end of their shelter is your patent of freedom. It means that you have overcome the control systems that made them arrogant, leaving them alone in the face of the mediocrity of their own plots. The sentinels of false dignity, petrified by their own vulnerability, see in you the judge of an era that is coming to an end. Let them wander unprotected in the wind of reality. Your peace has become your only home, a portable sanctuary that no one can besiege, proving to the whole creation that the man who is no longer afraid of anything possesses everything that the powerful of this world are desperately trying to buy. The fog of unpredictability has lifted around your steps, leaving your opponents in a confusion that borders on pure madness. What the control experts and the analysts of your behavior observe with a cold sweat is the moment when you stop following the rails of human logic to adopt the fluidity of the wind. You have understood that the enemy can only strike what he can anticipate. By breaking your own habits and acting from a center of consciousness that escapes the calculations of the ego, you have become a moving, elusive, and ghostly target. This strategic opacity is a nightmare for those who live by prediction and surveillance. They scrutinize your networks, your words, and your silences, but they only encounter a fertile void that nothing comes to fill. Every movement you initiate seems to come from a dimension whose laws they ignore, forcing them to react to shadows while you are already elsewhere, preparing the next phase of your expansion with absolute discretion. Nothing is more terrifying for a manipulator than to lose track of the story he thought he was writing for you. They are watching you with that sick paranoia of the chess player who realizes that his opponent is no longer looking at the board, but at the entire universe. Your freedom of movement has become their mental prison. They are exhausting themselves by building traps on paths that you will never take, wasting their last resources on ridiculous conjectures. By cultivating this mystery, you have created a permanent climate of doubt in their own camp, because they no longer know if your calmness is preparation for the attack or the signing of a total detachment. This invisibility of your intentions means that you have taken over the command of time and space. You are no longer the subject of an observation. You are the observer who lets others fidget in the dark. The source validated this withdrawal from the radar of malice by making your life a divine improvisation that no one can plagiarize. You are now moving forward in a clarity that only you perceive, leaving the prophets of doom to get lost in their own labyrinths of assumptions. This silence of your strategy is your master certificate. It proves that you have gone beyond the stage of reaction to enter that of pure creation. The sentinels of predictability, petrified by your silence, see in you the end of their ability to influence. Let them worry about your next move and tremble at your absences. Your trajectory is now traced in the stars, far, far away from their mud radars, making your life an enigma that only your final success will solve before their astonished eyes. The fire of their resentment has just consumed its last reserves of gall, giving way to a silence of ashes that your detractors did not see coming. What the architects of your ruin observe with sudden fatigue is the moment when their hatred has ceased to be an engine to become a burden too heavy to bear in the face of the evidence of your ascension. You have understood that malice exhausts itself when it meets only royal indifference. By refusing to feed their anger with your reactions, you have forced these shadows to contemplate the uselessness of their fight. This mutation of their attitude is a total defeat. They no longer seek to destroy you. They now seek to make themselves forgotten, hoping that your sovereign gaze will not stop on their past betrayals. Their barking turned into a whisper of forced deference, a submission that was not born of love, but of a visceral recognition of your hierarchical and spiritual superiority. Nothing is more revealing of your power than to see your most bitter enemies lower their voices in your presence, as if they were afraid that the mere sound of their words would trigger a thunderbolt. They observe you with that nervous docility of the vanquished who awaits the sentence, realizing that every malice they have uttered has become an indelible stain on their own honor. Your success acted as a chemical calming agent on their agitation. They now feel obliged to deal with your reality, to feign respect, or to get behind your decrease so as not to be swept away by the wind of your history. This silent submission means that you have pacified your environment by the only density of your being. You did not need to negotiate peace. You imposed it by the unbearable brilliance of your integrity. They have become passive spectators of your empire, prisoners of a silence that is their only protection against the shame of their failures. The source validated this change by making your authority a law of nature that no one can derogate from without self-destructing. You are now moving into a world where the ancient wolves have become fearful shadows, raising the walls of your passage for fear of being unmasked by your light. This end of open hostility is your patent of tranquility. It proves that you have reached a level of power where even hatred must bow to survive. The sentinels of resentment, petrified by the majesty of your forgiveness or your forgetfulness, see in you the new center of gravity of their universe. Let them wall themselves in their silence and meditate on their impotence. Your march is now a procession of victory, and your silence is the foundation on which your undisputed reign rests, far, far away from the extinguished fury of those who dared to challenge you. The heavy artillery of insults and the crude traps of provocation have just sunk into the ocean of your detachment without causing the slightest wrinkle on the surface. What the conflict engineers observe with a rage that turns into despair is the moment when you stopped placing any value on their attempts to bite. You have understood that responding to the inferior is offering him an importance that he does not possess. By maintaining a sidereal distance between your mind and their gesticulations, you have made their existence invisible to your own eyes. This indifference is not a defensive posture. It is a radiation of superiority that instantly dries up any desire for struggle in the other. They scream into the void, hit the air, and exhaust themselves in demonstrations of strength that only meet the silence of a king who no longer descends from his throne for mud quarrels. Their humiliation is total. They realize that for you, they are no longer enemies, but simple background noises, insects banging against the glass of a consciousness too vast for them. Nothing is more destructive for the ego of a provocateur than to find that his venom is not even noticed. They observe you with that sick frustration of the castaway who cries out to a ship that does not change course, understanding that their power of nuisance depended entirely on your ability to suffer. By taking this pleasure away from them, you have disintegrated the raison d'etre of their malice. They suddenly feel small, useless, and tragically ridiculous in their relentlessness. Your success is now nourished by this combat economy. Where they waste their time developing strategies to discredit, you use yours to build empires of meaning and matter. This victory of the absence of reaction means that you have reached a level of nobility where your attention has become the most precious currency of your universe, a resource that you will never waste again for shadows in search of light. The source sealed this triumph by making your calm a no-go zone for the ambient negativity. You are now moving forward with the lightness of one who has understood that the greatest insult is forgetfulness. This sovereign contempt is your patent of invincibility. It proves that you have gone beyond the reward and punishment systems of society to obey only your own law of growth. The sentinels of provocation, petrified by your impassivity, see in you the end of their mediocre influence. Let them stir in the margins of your story and die out for lack of audience. Your empire no longer knows border wars because you have abolished the border itself, making your life a symphony of peace that no cry of hatred will ever be able to interrupt again. The echo of the last battles has just died down to give way to a silence of crystalline purity on the immensity of your inner domain. What the powers of the invisible observe with solemn reverence is the moment when you stopped fighting against the darkness to simply occupy it with the density of your light. You have understood that the true reign begins only when the enemy is no longer a threat or even a thought, but a simple dust swept by the wind of your realization. By walking on this land that you yourself freed from the influence of predators, you have established a law of peace that owes nothing to diplomacy, but everything to the steel of your integrity. This solitude is not isolation. It is the exclusivity of the summit, the privilege of one who shares his throne only with his own divinity. The landscape of your life is now cleared of the brambles of betrayal and the swamps of doubt, revealing an empire of possibilities where each project blooms without fear of being stifled by the malice of others. Nothing is more majestic than the sight of this territory where your will has become the only legitimate geography. They are watching you from the margins of your existence, these once noisy shadows, realizing that their access to your universe has been revoked for eternity. Your sovereign presence has drawn invisible but impassable borders, protecting your work and your loved ones with the force of an atomic bulwark. By fully inhabiting this calm after the storm, you have transformed your daily life into a sanctuary of continuous creation, where fear is no more than an archaeological concept belonging to a previous life. This reign means that you have reached the stage of unity. You are the king, the law, and the territory. The conspiracies that once surrounded you have been dissolved by the acid of your success, giving way to a clarity of vision that allows you to direct your destiny with demiurge precision. The source has sealed this pact of sovereignty by making your rest the ultimate proof of your power. You are now moving forward in a reality that obeys your rhythm, aware that the peace you breathe is the price of every fight you have fought with honor. This total pacification is your legacy, the foundation on which you will build monuments of meaning that will survive time. The sentinels of malice, petrified by the stability of your empire, see in you the triumph of the individual over chaos. Let them wander in the emptiness of their failures while you savor the extent of your conquest. Your life has become a sacred garden where only excellence has the right of city, making you the absolute ruler of an existence that no longer knows any other master than your own breath of life.